join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please join in a moment of silence. Thank you. Dr. Dollar, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Irwin?
Present.
Mrs. Killian? Present. Mrs. Lohr?
Present.
Ms. Lauer?
Present.
Dr. Powers?
Here. Thank you. I'm going to make a motion to open the meeting for our budget. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to open the meeting for our budget. Roll call, please.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian? Aye. Mrs. Lohr? Aye. Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye. Mrs. Wilson.
President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, and members of the Board of School Trustees. Before we move into the public comment portion of this evening's meeting, I'd like to take a few minutes to review the budget books we provided tonight. Budget books are also available for audience members if they'd like to take a copy. The 2022 budget book is organized in 3 sections as it was last year. Section 1 of the book contains the budget forms as required by the Department of Local Government Finance. Section 2 is the Capital Projects Fund Plan, and Section 3 is the Bus Replacement Fund Plan. The first 2 documents within Section 1 are Form 3, the Notice to Taxpayers of tonight's public hearing, which was advertised on Gateway in compliance with the requirements put forth by the DLGF, and Form 4, which is the resolution for appropriations and tax rates that we will bring forward on October 18th for adoption. As shown on Form 4, we will ask for you to adopt budgets totaling nearly $167.2 million for 2022. The referendum fund, $9.1 million budget, rainy day, $3.5 million budget, debt service, $10.3 million, education fund, $103.2 million, and operations just under $41 million. Tax levy approval is also shown for 3 funds, the referendum, debt service, and operation funds at a total of just under $45 million. Following those 2 forms, you will see the required budget forms grouped by fund for each of the 5 funds we discussed earlier. Each fund section includes the current year financial worksheet showing pertinent 2021 collection and expenditure data. Form 1 that lists the appropriation classifications or the proposed budget for 2022. Form 2, our estimate of miscellaneous revenues from sources of revenue other than the tax levy for the last 6 months of 2021 and calendar year 2022. And finally, Form 4B, the budget estimate showing the calculation of the budget levy and estimated tax rate of each fund. Within the documents for debt service, you will also see the debt service worksheet, which lists all debt by type and supports the budget figure for calendar year 2022. As stated at our last meeting, we developed the 2022 budget using a lower than anticipated assessed value, which inflates the proposed tax rates shown on Forms 4 and 4B. Also keep in mind that the budgets and levies will be lowered by the DLGF during the review process as they update our estimated figures and apply any statutory tax rate or levy limitations. Section 2 is the Capital Projects Fund Plan. It is a 3-year look at projected capital expenditures. The first year, the plan drives the capital expenditures budgeted within the operations fund. The CPF plan includes a page for all schools and facilities operated by the corporation, with the majority of expenditures reflected under the administration or the general services buildings. Please note that expenditures listed under each of these facilities are not indicative of projects or equipment we plan to provide specifically for those buildings, but rather are for corporation-wide needs under the direction of the departments housed at those administrative sites. Finally, the last section of the book includes the 5-year bus replacement plan. Included in the 2022 budget is the planned replacement of 17 buses at a cost not to exceed $1.96 million. As you know, we did not buy buses in 2020 and only purchased 12 this year, but in 2022, we plan on resuming our normal replacement cycle. With that said, President Lauer, it would now be appropriate to open the floor for citizens' comments regarding our 2022 budget proposed.
Thank you. And I again will remind the audience that we will show respect to each speaker that chooses to address the board, and their comments will be addressed to the board as a whole, and give each person that time that they can make their views known. Specifically, we want no hand gestures, thumbs up, thumbs down, or jeering or clapping, or any placards, signs, or banners that are visible either. So please keep that in mind as you are all part of the audience for our school board session tonight. Now, Joshua Holt, you had signed up to make a comment on the budget and public comment. So if you would like to address a budget comment at this time, Joshua Holt.
That may be the guy.
It is Jackie.
Okay. All right. Well, we may come back. That was the only sign up that I had regarding the budget. All right. Are there any comments on the proposed 2022 budget from the board?
I would just like to thank our finance team for answering all questions that we've had, and just being really diligent about that. And I just want to encourage everyone to take a copy of this and see what a massive operation this really is here, and how much goes into getting our kids to school, having them fed and ready to learn. It's really pretty impressive what happens here on a daily basis. So take one of those, learn from it.
Then I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. There has been a motion to close the public hearing by Mrs. Scott and a second by Dr. Powers. Dr. Goder, please.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian? Aye. Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
All right, now I will take a call to order for our regular business meeting. And we'll go ahead with the vision and mission, which is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. Superintendent Hayworth, we're going to recognize education and heritage.
Yes, you might notice, my mic on, you guys hear me in the back? You might notice the boards, the display boards that have been worked on for literally months now that reflects our high school history And if it's possible, could I have, if they're here, the members of the Education Heritage Group to come forward if they're here? Come on up.
Shy group, you're not shy. I know this group, they aren't that shy.
You know, several months ago, I went to our Educational Heritage Group and asked them, as we began to talk about what the future of high schools look like in Vigo County, if they could capture a little bit of that history for us. And I see these display boards being used as we go to elementary schools, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, as we go out to speak to what our future is for our high schools. And we are also reminiscing. We're thinking back. We're reflecting on the tremendous educational heritage we have here in Vigo County. So I don't know if there is a spokesman in the group that may want to speak to this process.
Okay. Well, it's been quite a learning experience for all of us, especially for those of us who aren't from Vigo County. So I'm from out of, but to learn the history of each high school, find out who was the first principal, what were the school colors, the school mascot, school song, you know, what happened to that school and where did those students go when consolidation happened. And we tried to display that on these boards, so we hope that it rekindles some memories for some of you or maybe some of your parents who went to that school or grandparents, and decided on doing some display boards for distinguished alumni. And we know we don't have everyone, because we know there's thousands of distinguished people who went through our high schools, but we tried to focus on those who are internationally known for some reason. So we have a sports board and one for, let's see, arts, entertainment, and medicine, science, and other civic experiences too. It's been a labor of love, and we've learned a lot.
Well, we thank you so much for your hard work, and I would ask the members of the audience, if you haven't taken a look at them, they're really quite incredible, so thank you very much.
They've spent a tremendous amount of time, as you can just look at the boards and realize the investigation that went into that and then putting it all together. Please do, before you leave this evening, glance around, walk around and see these boards, and maybe it'll trigger some memories from your own past also. We're on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mrs. Wise made the motion to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Irwin seconded that. Dr. Goldberg.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian? Aye. Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Now regarding the September accounts payable docket. Take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve the accounts payable docket.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Lohr made the motion to approve the accounts payable docket. Mrs. Killian seconded that. Dr. Goldberg.
Ms. Scott? Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer? Aye. Dr. Powers? Aye. Now on to new business, we have several donations.
We do live in a very generous community, a community that tries to see that when needs need to be met, that they fill in those gaps. So the administration seeks approval of the following donations to Benjamin Franklin Elementary School, Deming Early Learning Center, Honey Creek Middle School, Terre Haute North Vigo High School, Terre Haute South Vigo High School, the VCSC Backpack Program, and Woodrow Wilson Middle School.
I make a motion to approve. Dr. Powers?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. It's been moved and seconded to approve the donations. Dr. Golden?
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye. And now the personnel report, Mr. Cox.
President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the Board of Trustees, administration seeks approval of the personnel report as presented.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel report and professional leave requests.
I'll second. Thank you. Mrs. Wise made a motion to approve the personnel report, professional leave request. Mrs. Scott seconded that.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye. Next on our agenda is the creating positive relationships.
The health insurance.
I'm sorry. Oh, the Vigo County School Corporation health insurance rates, which does. And if there are public comments on the VCSC health insurance rates. Mr. Cox?
President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, administration seeks approval of a recommendation from the Benefits Committee that met 2 weeks ago to increase the rate of insurance at 7% while maintaining the rate of percentage contribution.
There are all employee groups who are represented on that committee.
They are. Each employee group has a seat at the table. Food services, bus drivers, transportation, custodians, teachers, managerial, all kind of members of the board.
We're right in thinking that this increase is appropriate in a long time coming, probably with the way things have been going in the market.
It has, within that market, it's anywhere between 9 and 14%.
What have our past increases been?
2016, we had a 0%, 2017, 0%, 2018, 4%, 2019, 4%, 2020, 5.5%, 21, 3%, and this would be a 7%.
I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the health insurance rates as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mrs. Lohr made a motion to approve the Vigo County School Corporation health insurance rate, and Mr. Irwin seconded that. Dr. Golden?
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian? Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the grants?
President Lauer, Dr. Supa Hayworth, and the Board of School Trustees. I'm Karen McDonald, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Adult Education Grant. The Adult Education Grant supports adult student or education instructors, educational assistants, administrative, clerical, equipment, supplies, and professional development. Adult education focuses on helping adults improve their basic education skills in order to pass the high school equivalency exam and/or post-secondary entrance exams, as well as to provide the academic and workplace skills required to earn a career certification and gain employment. I'm here tonight because our program has been allocated an additional $5,000 for the purpose of the high school equivalency exam fee reimbursements. We estimate this will help about 43 students with their fees to be able to take the high school equivalency exam this year.
Can I ask a question? Just to clarify, that extra funding is coming to us from the state, from the regular part of our funding?
Yes, it'll be part of our grant this year. It's coming from the state, so it will reimburse our program for the cost of the exams.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Doler.
Good evening, Superintendent Hayworth, President Lauer, and other board members. The next 3 grants in your packet are focused on student learning. The first grant, the 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant, is $240,000. This grant is from the Indiana Department of Ed, and it allows us to partner with numerous groups in the community to serve our students in after-school programs. We have 3 elementary buildings, as you see here, Devaney, Wabash, and Sugar Grove Elementary Schools, that partner with the YMCA, Chances for Youth, and Camp Navigate. This grant also supports a comprehensive summer program at Woodrow Wilson, and we partner there with the Vigo County Education Foundation, Duke Energy, and other community groups such as the Pie Company that help us provide services in the summer. So we are very excited to bring this grant forward. We have Holly Pease serves as our program director, and Kathy Deal is our site coordinator. The second grant we bring you this evening is the Formative Assessment Grant. This grant is always important to us, but with COVID it has special significance in that we're looking at learning loss and what can we do to help students throughout the year measure their learning and then help us readjust our instruction in the classroom. And so what this grant does, it's $94,539.78. Again, it's from the Indiana Department of Education. It helps us serve our students in English language arts and math for students in grades 3 through 8. This grant does not have a lot of opportunities to be creative necessarily. Instead, it allows you to purchase a grant funded kind of an assessment at the Indiana Department of Ed that's already on their recommended list. And so we purchased the ClearSight product. We have an assessment committee that's looked at the different assessments, and we feel that this is a good one for our students. It's aligned with iLearn, and it provides a lot of specific standards breakdown information in language arts and math. So we'd like to move forward with that assessment as well. And then the third grant we bring you this evening is the High Ability Grant from the Indiana Department of Ed, $89,063. And this grant serves our students from K to 12 in enrichment and high ability programs. The grant provides enrichment materials, differentiated activities for elementary, middle, and high. And it also supports high ability teacher training as well as conferences and workshops for our staff. So we bring you those 3 grants this evening and ask for your approval on those.
Do any of these involve summer school classes or activities during the summer?
Yes, the 21st Century, up until last year, we were fortunate to have the CARES and ESSER funding, but prior to that, this grant has funded the entire program, and the Vigo County Education Foundation funds transportation. So we're very grateful for that.
Could I have a motion to approve?
I move approval of the grants as presented.
Second. Thank you. Mr. Irwin moved to approve the grants, and Mrs. Scott seconded that.
Ms.
You
Scott?
guys, Karen?
I brought the card with me.
Okay, all right. Roll call, please.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Now, Dr. Doler, if you will just give us an update on the Creating Positive Relations.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Lauer. Next, I'd like to provide you with our CPR subcommittee update. As you remember, on November 24th, 2020, the Vigo County Board of School Trustees approved the VCSC Sex Education Plan. At that time, the Vigo County Board of School Trustees formed a subcommittee with the task of reviewing the CPR curriculum, considering state standards, medical reviewer comments, professional judgment, and teacher, counselor, parent experiences in their review. The CPR curriculum will now be taught by VCSC teachers during a week-long opt-in enrichment opportunity for students in grades 6 through 9. Our subcommittee met from March to August 2021 and worked with Karen Mitchell, CPR program director, and her team to make changes. The subcommittee included, besides myself, Matthew McClendon, our Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Civility, Rich Woodison, Terre Haute South Vigo Health Department Chair, Pam White, Terre Haute North Vigo Department Health Chair, Gretchen Wright, West Vigo High School Health Chairperson, Eleni Miller, VCSC Nursing Chairperson, Trina McDonald, Middle School Principal, Dr. Yvonne Jones, Middle School Counseling Supervisor, and Amanda Childress, Vigo County Parent Network. The CPR subcommittee reviewed the updates by grade levels. To illustrate this work, the subcommittee discussed 17 specific content issues in grade 6 that were identified by one of the reviewers. For grade 7, the subcommittee examined over 21 content issues. In grade 8, the subcommittee examined 19 issues, and in grade 9, the subcommittee reviewed and discussed over 26 issues. Tonight, we are informing the Vigo County Board of School Trustees that our committee has completed its work as tasked on November 24th, 2020. We have one copy of the CPR curriculum here this evening, and after our update tonight, we will make additional copies available to parents and other community members in our middle and high schools, as well as our district office. Thank you to Holly Pease, curriculum coordinator, and 5 retired VCSC teachers who will deliver the week-long opt-in enrichment opportunity. Mrs. Pease is working with our principals and health department chairpersons to finalize the opt-in permission form that will be used this school year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gold. Now's the time for citizens' comments, and Brad Birchfield.
Is this just for the thing that we just talked about, or just for?
This is open comments. This is open comments on anything.
Okay, thank you.
I have just 7 people, so it'll be 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brad Birchfield.
All right, it's been brought to my attention from parents and teachers, and I don't know if this is related to what she just said, that some truly disgusting things have been discussed about health class and sex education. I hope what I have heard is false or exaggerated. I have been told, and I don't know if these are the content issues that she was referring to, that some of the things that I have been told by teachers who were talking about this, said that they're talking about some pretty foul things. Not all of it's foul, but some of it is. Some of the things are homosexuality, anal sex, threesomes, and sex changes or transgenders. That has been discussed about either talking about, teaching, or educating our kids on such topics. If there's any truth about this, then I am truly disgusted and appalled, and I think most parents would be disgusted and angry. If this is true, then there is a line being crossed. Number one, this is not education. This is borderline pornography and child exploitation, if this is true. There was a recent story in Ohio where a high school was teaching a college course from a book called 642 Things to Write About, which included kids to write a sex scene they wouldn't show their mom and then rewrite it in a way that they would show their mom, and it's utterly disgusting. That public school would think that this was acceptable. The mayor there, as well as the prosecutor, have already threatened criminal charges against that school board. Of course, they are now pulling that curriculum, but the damage has already been done. This type of education should be left up to the parents, not a teacher, school, or school board. In my opinion, the only thing that should be taught is just general safe sex. I hope this is false because we live in Indiana. We don't live in California where it's nearly acceptable to be a pedophile. Again, I don't know what the content is. This is just what was brought to my attention. It may be way off base of what she's saying, but if there's any truth to it, I'm truly concerned as a parent. This is the third time I've spoke to this board. I have never mentioned anybody's name, not once, but I'm being attacked by name because the persons I have mentioned.
Mr. Birchfield, you just need to stick to your comments regarding,
I thought this was open for public forum too. I'm sorry, may I misunderstand you?
just
Who's talking? I can't
address
see.
the entire board, and we don't ever talk about personnel.
Right, I'm not talking about persons. That's what I'm saying here. I'm not talking about anybody, is what I'm saying here. I'm just saying what I'm experiencing right now for being part of the public speaking. I'm not mentioning anybody in particular. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
Well, let me, if I keep going, if I think I'm crossing that line, let me know. Is that fair?
I certainly will.
Okay, thank you. I've not mentioned anybody's names. The only reason I've even talked about the masks and what's going on and referring to the health department is just based on hypocrisy and the double standard.
Okay, I think right there.
Okay, I'll skip that then.
Continue that line.
Do what?
You do not need to
Okay,
continue
that's
that
fine.
line of thought.
Okay, so apparently then my kid was exposed at school to a COVID positive student and was quarantined. It occurred at lunch. I'm not worried about COVID, and personally I do not want my kids quarantined, considering that statistically speaking, kids are most likely to die from the flu or lightning strikes. But what does frustrate me is that this occurred on a Tuesday. My kid went to school on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, and a half a day on Tuesday before he was told that he had been exposed to a child who had tested positive for COVID. All 5 of those days, including Tuesday that he was there for a half a day, he had lunch. So during lunchtime, if he were to have COVID, which he didn't have COVID, he would have been exposing himself to those kids during those days that he should have been quarantined. I was told either to get the test, which could take up to 3 days to get results, or finish the rest of the 10 days of quarantine, and he can come back the following Monday. So he missed 3 days of school, and what if he had gotten COVID? He had no symptoms the first few days, and damage would have already been done because he would have exposed the other kids at lunch for the 5 days that he did go to school. We should have been able to let him stay and not quarantine. He was already 7 days in before we knew that he was even exposed, and he had no symptoms. I just feel like this is silly and this system is broken,
30
don't work.
seconds remaining.
If there is a delay and it's over 5 days from exposure and exposed has no symptoms, by that time, let it go or leave it up to the parents of the exposed children. And in closing, we must do better and start learning or start leading and not following because we're afraid. My daughter has gone to the nurse's office several times for belly aches, headaches, and the only thing that we can find out after speaking to her is that she says she struggles to breathe after recess and gym because of wearing the mask.
And that's time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Fairbanks?
Good evening. I'm Ruth Fairbanks. I'm the parent of a student at North. Thank you for making public health decisions affecting teachers, students, and the community based on the guidance you've received from health professionals. Tonight, I'm here to talk about the Creating Positive Relationships curriculum that has been used in our school corporation for 26 years without ever being under review. So it's like 28 years now. I look forward to the opportunity to read the corrected curriculum. But once again, I want to know why the school corporation and the board have been so resistant to examining other available curriculum. You're able to choose different vendors in other areas, but seem really wedded to this fundamentally flawed program. I understand that the CPR program is now opt-in. But what will the corporation do for students who want to opt in to a better curriculum? Last month, I had the opportunity to have a parent conference with one of the many talented, dedicated, and wise teachers at my child's school. More than once, in a very short meeting about something unrelated to what we're talking about tonight, this teacher pointed out to me more than once that his class was a college prep course and that the structure of the class wasn't just about conveying subject matter, but was also, importantly, part of preparing students for their lives after they had left our school system, and in this case, when the students go on to college. This is something that my children's teachers have been teaching me since my children were in kindergarten. Their education is not about them as children. It's not for them as children. It is for them as the adults and the community members that they will be, and in the case of high school students, that they will be very soon. The abstinence only until marriage sex ed program that our schools have allowed without review for 26 years did not serve our students well as children. It served some of them very poorly, because we do have students in our schools who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, and students who have various disabilities. And those students, none of them were served well by this curriculum. Some of them were damaged, and you've heard them talk about the damage that they experienced. But it most certainly doesn't prepare any of our students for lives as young adults. In Indiana, more than half of our high school seniors have had sex. More than half have already had sex. The average age of marriage in the United States is over 27 for women, and it's close to 30 for men. That means that the average Hoosier is sexually active for a decade before they get married. And even married people would benefit from a more effective and complete education in sexual and reproductive health. Come on. If we can keep our students' future foregrounded in mind in chemistry class, we should absolutely keep it in mind in sexual and reproductive health education. The past 18 months have been a crash course for most of you and most of us in the nature of public health. I urge the board to remember that sex ed is also fundamentally a public health issue. And by the measures of public health, teen births and the spread of sexually transmitted diseases, our county is not doing very well, even compared to other counties in our state. A couple of years ago, Vigo County had a teen birth rate of 34 per 1,000 girls aged 15 to 19. I've told you this before, and I hope that you remember, that Monroe County, which is just a few miles away, has a teen birth rate of 8 per 1,000 girls aged 15 to 19. Now, I remember that the school board said, I think the phrase was repeated by Mr. Irwin, that the school board wanted a curriculum that was medically accurate, up to date, inclusive of all of our students, and free from sharing. I remember that, and I hope you remember too.
Thank you. Heather Hindle?
I'd like to thank the school board and superintendent for their efforts to protect the health of our students and our community. I wanted to talk about the CPR program. I don't have any kids still in Vigo County schools. Myself, when the abstinence-only sex education programs became more common, that's how I was taught. I went to Terre Haute Baptist, and after I left high school, a few years later, I went to Bible college where I met my husband, and in those institutions, if I received any sex education, it was abstinence-based and not medically accurate. And you can look at me as either a success story or as a victim of that kind of teaching. Because, I mean, my husband and I did wait until marriage at 21 years old. We hadn't been with anybody else, and we never have been since. We've been married for almost 30 years. But I can also tell you that for the first 7 years of our marriage, all but 6 months of that time, I was either pregnant or breastfeeding. And we had our first child shortly before our first anniversary. We had children every 2 years after that until we had 4, and I was sterilized. But it took us until, we got married in '92, it took us until 2006 to get out of poverty because we had so many small children, and that isn't something like young couples can necessarily deal with if they don't have a lot of family support, which we did not. So personally, that is not a way I would teach my own children. I don't ever want my kids, my grandkids to experience what my family did as a result of the ignorance that we had because of the teachings that we were denied. And I would really appreciate in considering that important, which we'll see, you know, I don't know what it's gonna say, but I appreciate protecting kids from things like that too, and your efforts to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret Hurdig?
My name is Margaret Hurdlick. You're gonna have to forgive me because I threw away my notes because my head is exploding from what I've heard tonight. Honestly, I feel like that update that we received was completely inadequate. I learned nothing here today that I could not have learned from the newspaper. And I have a full-time job and I have children and I'm making time to be here tonight. And we have worked for 2 years on this issue. We have given countless hours, we have researched, we have given you scientific information, and I'm really feeling disrespected right now. There was no discussion. I'm hoping that you're going to ask some questions. I have questions. First of all, why is there one curriculum here tonight? I'm here. There are other parents here who want to see this new and improved, updated curriculum. Now we have to make more time to come and find that curriculum? Why retired teachers? Can our own health teachers not do this? Are they unwilling to talk, to say words like penis and vagina, and is that what this is all about? How's this being funded? I'd like to know that. And finally, were other curricula considered? I spent last night watching last November's meeting again. I should have been grading papers, but that's what I did. And I heard talk about best practices. Well, the reality is that abstinence-only education is not a best practice. You can Google that and find that out in 30 seconds. But we also know, we've learned that because we presented this, a lawyer presented it here, that abstinence-only is not the only option in Indiana. We can do so much better for our children. But when I watched that meeting last night, I was struck by how so many school board members, with 2 exceptions, were treating this as a popularity contest. How many people on this side? How many people on that side? Well, this is what they want. Let's give them what they want. The previous speaker, or the one before that, was talking about the shocking statistics of STDs, of teenagers getting pregnant in our community. And this program has been here, even if it's new and improved, it's been here for 30 years and we should be considering other options. I also want to call out hate. And tonight I heard hate, and that makes me mad. My friends who are LGBTQ+ are not disgusting. There are children in our schools and they are not disgusting. They are struggling with those issues. And we've had grown women and men up here, people in tears. The director of the Pride Center resigned because of feeling attacked. That's how unsafe she felt. So, frankly, I want to know, is this new curriculum inclusive? And I'm shocked that there was no PowerPoint talking about the differences, I'm shocked by that. I feel like we deserve a comprehensive discussion. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Emma Crossan?
Hi, I'm Emma Crossan. I have a child at Davis Park and am a graduate of 3 Eagle County schools. So yeah, I wanted to just echo what Margaret said and just counter what we heard from, I think it was Mr. Birchfield, just the words of hate and calling our kids and our, others in this community disgusting and an abomination and comparing.
I just want you to address the board and not comment on any other speaker, please.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to say to you and the board, I want you to hear a voice that is countering the idea that any of this is disgusting. And frankly, it's a perfect example of why we need to do better in our schools. And I want to say it to the public that I hope, and any kids who may have heard that, who feel attacked by it, that I hope will get you a sex ed curriculum that you deserve, and that makes you feel affirmed and included. And I actually wasn't planning to speak on the sex ed tonight, but was also pretty appalled by the update and the lack of information in it. All we heard is that there were something like, was it 50 to 100 issues that were addressed? So it seems that we've taken the approach of harm reduction, of taking something that's pretty bad, and let's just try to make it maybe a little less harmful to our kids, rather than looking at how do we want better for our kids? There's so many options and so much information that I had nothing to do with, but that many people worked hundreds of hours to bring to you all. So it's pretty disappointing what we heard tonight, and maybe we'll hear more information and your questions can help to illuminate some of that. So I hope you'll do that in the question time. What I actually came here to talk about was to express my disappointment upon learning last week that the school corporation chose to deploy the police to arrest some of our children following acts of vandalism, I think mostly in school bathrooms, that were linked to a social media trend. From everything I've heard, the acts of vandalism and theft were extreme and significantly disruptive, made some bathrooms inaccessible, which is a health issue for our kids, and caused some student, staff, and faculty to feel unsafe. Yet, do we really need to deploy the police to arrest our children? I'd say absolutely not. To willingly send our kids into the criminal justice system flies in the face of what you read tonight as your mission, which is helping our kids rise to their greatest potential. Or as it says on the website, we are here to develop leaders and create community. In a November 2019 Tribune Star article, we learned that the school corporation was implementing something called restorative practices in school discipline, using resources from the Peace Learning Center, which was funded with the Project Aware grant. And according to the Peace Learning Center, just a quick Google search, you'll see that restorative practices aim to respond to harm not with punishment, but by focusing on relationships and repairing the harm, rather than punishment that enacts further harm. Restorative practices involve all those involved in an instance of harm in a collaborative process of accountability that, quote, it's accountability that, quote, comes from understanding the true harm of what you have done and understanding what you can do differently, working to make things right and allowing for real change and growth, unquote. Sounds a lot like helping our kids rise to their greatest potential. Yet the recent acts of vandalism seem like an exceptional opportunity to practice restorative justice, to treat these incidents as opportunities to develop leaders, to create community. But instead, we learned that school leaders, we don't know who, called in the cops to criminalize our kids and turn them over to a criminal legal system that is notoriously dangerous and destructive to children's futures. This is the school to prison pipeline in action. And once a child gets turned over, gets criminal charges, whether they spend time in juvie or not, once that happens, they are labeled. We know that it happens often that their families are targeted by police. And labeling teenagers as criminals puts them and their families into the cycle of policing that has, in very real ways, created a criminalized underclass in our community. So I urge you as the school board tonight to do better. I ask that you solicit a report, that you use your authorities to request a report on the state of restorative justice in our schools. And where is it being practiced, where is it not? Who makes the decision when to call in the police, who doesn't? For example, we learned this week that restorative practice are not being used in cases of vandalism. But we also heard back in that 2019 article that the school corporation wouldn't use restorative practices in cases involving drugs or weapons, even toy weapons. My reaction was, why the heck not? Those cases seem like the ones where restorative justices can be most transformative for our children. So the state of restorative justice in our schools is of utmost importance to our kids who face the very real potential of having their education and lives derailed by criminalization. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Trachtenberg.
Thank you to the board for listening to the public comments this evening. I would just like to echo the sentiments from the others that we should speak out when people use words of hate, especially towards marginalized groups like our LGBTQ community members. I don't think it's appropriate, and having an inclusive sex education for those students is critical to their survival, and I want to underscore that heavily. Not what I was intending to talk about, but I did want to speak up about that. So I'm speaking as a concerned resident of Terre Haute. It pains me to see the response of the Vigo County School Corporation towards students who vandalized school bathrooms in the past couple of weeks. While I acknowledge the damage that students made to school property, it is unacceptable to arrest children for this behavior. This seems like a perfect learning opportunity to address students using restorative practices that the Vigo County School Corporation started to implement in November of 2019. I'd like you to imagine when you were in school and you made poor decisions as a result of impulse, or if you were a perfect student, imagine one of your friends making poor decisions, and think about the difference that it would make for you as a child to either be incarcerated for that decision or receive the opportunity to learn from your mistakes and make things right. Child psychology research has shown that timeouts, physical violence, and emotional violence do more harm than good to solving problems with children, and incarcerating children is no different from these harms. Incarcerating children will not teach respect for school property or the school community. Talking with children and giving them the tools to repair or replace the damaged property could be an example of positive change and leadership. I'd like to see the school board share which schools are currently using restorative practices and how we can learn from those interventions to support our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Brown.
Good evening, thank you. Before I go, I want to express my support of you all with your masking of students and staff in the schools. I really appreciate that. It helps to keep them safe and to help our community as well, so thank you. I'm also talking about restorative justice, but maybe with a slightly different tack. I too saw the Tribune Star article where Vigo County staff, so principals, counselors, deans, and so on, attended a workshop. So this article came out November 3rd, 2019. And it seems like you all were on the right track there. That was, it's awesome. From everything I've read and seen, that is the way to go. My guess is, well, that was in the fall of 19, and we know what happened in the spring of 20. And I know everything's kind of been been a little unsettled since that time. And like Emma and Jordan, I too was a little taken aback when I read about the students who had done the vandalism, which absolutely not condoning that. That is not acceptable. But then reading about the contrast then with, oh, they're going to be arrested. Or if students engage in this behavior, we're going to arrest them. And that just seems to me that it flies in the face of these ideas about restorative justice in education. If we can't do these practices with children, we don't have hope in our society for anybody to ever make things right and to treat people in a different way. I found this report that the National Education Policy Center put out in January 2020 about restorative justice in education that I think could be helpful for our community. And I mean, kind of listen to what they're talking about here. They're saying practitioners implementing restorative justice in education aim to proactively address relational, emotional, academic, cognitive, and physical needs before challenging behaviors occur. That's the ideal world. before it happens. But, as we know, children have very poor impulse control, right? Our brains don't actually fully develop till we're about 25, as far as that goes. So when challenging behaviors do occur, they work to address those behaviors in ways that heal, teach, repair harm, and to tend to the needs of both those harmed and those who caused the harm. Moreover, they work to integrate restorative justice in education with racial and social justice initiatives. I would just like to encourage you all on the board to do your best here to implement some of these ideas with our students. We know that the school to prison pipeline affects students of color and students from impoverished families the most. We have a lot of such students in our community, and I think we can do better by them. Thank you.
Thank you. That finishes those who had signed up for public comment. So is there information from Superintendent Hayward?
The only thing that I would have is next week we'll be re-engaging our policy book development with the understanding and the hope that we would have it done by the end of this calendar year.
Okay. Any other board members? I would just like to say that we have investigated with the State Board of Accounts and the Indiana School Board Association as to the definition of a conflict of interest and how it would affect the board. And if a board member gains some monetary gain from a decision that we make, then there would be a conflict of interest. And if there is no monetary gain, then there is no conflict. And we checked with the State Board of Accounts and the Indiana School Board Association to clarify that definition. Any other comments?
I got a comment.
Yes.
It's no secret how I felt about CPR. Even the name I brought up before, it is hard for people to believe that our sex education program is called CPR. I often joke that the IRS was already taken, so somebody came up with CPR. But it really isn't a funny topic, is it? It's very serious. I don't like what has happened, as I was one of only 2 who voted no. And as you know, it's a majority rule. So I don't know if there's any comfort or solace in it for the people who wanted us to change, but I want you to know that I personally was against this and would have liked to have seen a different program. And I want to thank all of you for all the hard work that you did. You did educate the group. You did bring the level up, the attention up on what's going on with childhood pregnancy, with many issues that have affected our community. And I mean, I really applaud all of you. This went on. Many of you here tonight weren't party to that, but we had meetings for 18 months, some lasting 2, probably 3 hours. We gave statistics to the other board members. They chose not to go that direction. I'm disappointed. I'm going to pay attention to this new program. I'm hoping I can observe these classes, hoping some of the terrible shame and the tactics that were used in the past are gone. But we need to stay vigilant. And you know why? Because our kids deserve better than this. We can give them a better sex ed program than this.
Any other comments? Then I will announce that our next meeting will be October the 18th, right here. Same time, same place. Thank you.
Thank you.